Real thing here in Cleveland here. We're planning, for our future, for our finances in real estate. I'm offering this as a contribution, to my, great clients and future clients, just so they know how to handle it. I know this is not permanent where we are right now, and there will be a time when we're gonna be gone. right? And we want to make sure that our kids, our family are able to handle our finances in real estate that we really have worked hard for. So our first speaker here, which is attorney Thomas Osborn, is going to talk about estate planning. Welcome.
Hello, I'm Tess. I'm sorry to interrupt. Hello.
She's trying to talk to you.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Mom Tess. Can you please turn your video on
Turn
so
the video
everyone
on.
can see who's talking?
Yeah.
Do you see?
There you go. Can you see me?
Okay, there you go. Yeah, we can see you now.
I'm gonna move this up here so I can see and you can see.
This is the topic.
Okay,
Yeah.
there we go.
We're good?
Okay,
Very good.
and can I have my first slide?
Angel, we need the first slide. Can you show it, please? You have to unmute yourself so we can
Right, oops.
unmute her so we can talk.
Right.
She's muted.
Angel unmute.
Yeah, hold on.
She's the host.
Where's Angel? There we go. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, great. So I'm Tom Osborn. I'm an attorney in Glendora. I do estate planning, which is the use of wills, trusts, and other documents to handle the transfer of assets from someone to their heirs after they pass, or manage them if they're incapacitated. So I want to explain some of the documents that we use, and there's a lot of confusion in this area. So I want to kind of go through the basics with you. So we start with a will. What is a will? A will is just a set of instructions that says, here's what I want to happen to my assets when I pass away. Here's who I want to get them. And here's the person I want to be in charge of carrying that all out. That person's called the executor. Most people have heard of that rule. Okay. So a will doesn't do anything until you die. It doesn't control your assets. You don't transfer anything into a will. It just sits there and is a set of instructions. And when you die, that's when the will comes to life. But the will doesn't, the executor can't just go ahead and carry out the instructions in the will. They have to have authority given to them by a probate court. A probate court is a division of the superior court. They have a criminal court, a civil court, a family law court, and a probate court. The probate court specializes in all the issues that come up with liquidating assets, transferring things to beneficiaries, paying creditors, paying taxes, doing all those things. The problem with the probate process is it's really time consuming and very, very expensive. Next slide, please. There we go. So what is probate? So like I said, it's the legal process of carrying out assets. As I said, the executor who's named in the will cannot do anything until a court gives them a court order saying that they are officially in charge of the estate. So they have to file a petition with the court, ask the court to appoint them. Takes a couple months to get a hearing, so everything just sits there. After the hearing, the court will give the executor an order with a stamp and a court seal saying you're in charge. And that allows banks, realtors, stockbrokers to know they can deal with this person because the court has appointed them to be in charge. Okay. Let's see. Yeah, it takes a long time to get a hearing date. During the probate process, there are built-in waiting periods. So once you're appointed, there's a 4-month period that creditors have to file claims against the estate and for those claims to be managed. And at the end of the case, you have to file a petition to close the estate with an accounting. It takes several months in LA at least. So overall, it takes like about a year to a year and a half. During that time, the assets are in estate accounts and are not available for the family. They're held up mainly. And then, of course, we have the fees, and more fees. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so this is just a little chart to give you an example. The two largest fees in probate are the executor's fee, because the executor gets paid for doing all that work. And of course, the attorney's fees. We don't want to forget about them. So this just gives you an example. I like to focus on the $1 million estate, because that's fairly common now. If there's a house and some cash, the estate's probably close to $1 million in California. We don't count mortgages. Okay, lawyers aren't stupid. We don't deduct for the mortgage. We use the gross estate, okay? So if you have $1 million estate, the executor's fee is going to be $23,000. The attorney's fee is going to be $23,000. So to probate one house and a bank account to the kids, it's going to cost $46,000 in fees for executors and attorney fees to probate those two assets. And you also have filing fees, publication fees, bond fees, appraisal fees, a lot of fees in there. Okay, so that's kind of outrageous to get up to near $50,000 in fees just to transfer a house to the kids. So that's where the revocable trusts come in. Next slide, please. So we use a trust to keep you out of the court system. A trust is a set of instructions like a will. The difference is the trust is actually kind of a living entity. You transfer your assets into the trust. You actually change the name on your real estate. In my case, I would say Tom Osborn as trustee of the Osborn Trust. And that would be on the deed. And that means that trust now owns that property. I control the trust. I'm the trustee and I'm the beneficiary, so I haven't got any control of everything. But the title to the property is in the name of the trust. Trusts don't die. So if I die, my trust has a provision that says, if I die, my daughter Ashley steps up and becomes the new trustee. Now, as distinguished from probate, where you got to go to court and get a court order, with a trust, Ashley doesn't need anything but a death certificate. She takes the death certificate and the trust and goes to the bank and collects the assets, opens a trust account to hold everything, goes to the realtor with the trust and the death certificate, showing she's the trustee, lists the property and sells it, takes the money, puts it in the trust account, pays all the creditors, credit cards, anything outstanding, makes sure all the tax returns are filed, and then she distributes the assets. This is done with the family in private, outside of the court system completely. No filing fees, no long waits. Many times there's not even an executor fee or a trustee fee because a family member will do it themselves. And in the case I've described with a house that they're going to sell in a bank account, they barely need me. There's some notices we need to send out. They need some guidance on how to do certain things. Maybe some help with kind of accounting to the beneficiaries at the end of if there are any issues, but they kind of call on me as they need. It's not going to be $23,000, probably be under $1,000 just to get my work for some miscellaneous things that need to be done. That's in a case where the house is going to go to one child or a couple of children and they've agreed to sell it. Obviously, if it's a larger estate, if there's multiple properties, 10-unit apartment buildings, businesses, that is going to get more expensive just because you're dealing with more assets and there's more work to do. But in the smaller estates, which is the majority of them, we're mainly talking about a house, a retirement account, bank accounts, and stocks. That can be handled privately in the family, as long as everybody agrees and everybody gets along, which is not every family. You can do it that way. Next slide, please. Okay, so the process of settlement, that's what we call the equivalent of a probate. So when somebody dies, we settle the estate. So the trustee takes over. To clear the real property, all they have to do is record a copy of the death certificate. And that tells anybody looking at the title that the first trustee has died. Ashley, the next trustee, has now taken over and she's in charge. So title company realtors looking at the records office is going to see that Ashley is now entitled to the property. She can sell it. No court involvement, no court orders necessary. And once the property is sold, they can transfer the assets to the beneficiary. So we're talking a period of weeks or maybe a few months here to do this, not a year to a year and a half. And the money can be immediately available. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, settlement fees, as I said, they're based on the amount of work involved. So very little involved with a house that's going to be sold or just transferred to the kids and some miscellaneous cash assets. Obviously, if there's businesses and rentals and there's rental money coming in and tenants to deal with and evictions that have to be handled, there's more work, so there's more money involved. But I've never charged anybody $23,000 to settle a trust. This doesn't happen, doesn't get that high. And we don't have the time frame. It's completely under the control of the family. A lot of it can be done without the attorney. They can do things on their own. They can manage the properties on their own. They can sell them to the realtor on their own. And as long as the family members get along, they can even waive the accounting. That's a big expense at the end that counts for everything that's happened and gone on. Maybe all they want to see is the bank statements and the check register to see how the money was spent, and they're happy with it. And they waive the accounting and they distribute. I see that all the time. They sell things in a couple of months. Okay, how's my time? 19. Okay, a large area that is overlooked is the case of incapacity. What happens if I'm in a car accident, I hit my head, I have a brain injury, I'm in the hospital, I'm still alive, but I have had a stroke or something and I'm incapacitated. If I do not have a trust or any other documents, and everything's in my name, my house, my bank accounts, my stock account, my family has to go back to the dreaded court and open a conservatorship. A conservatorship is like a probate while you're still alive. It's a court supervised process where my assets are put into a conservatorship account. Someone is appointed to act on my behalf and manage my finances for me, pay my bills, take care of the property, pay the mortgage, sell things, buy things, whatever. It is a long, tedious, complicated, very, very expensive process. Any of you followed the Britney Spears case? She was under a conservatorship. Her father was the conservatorship, stole a lot of money from her. So the court supervision part is maybe not there. So conservatorships, you want to avoid. You want to keep it out of court. So there's two ways we do that with a trust and with an estate plan. The trust has a provision in it that says, if I am incapacitated and a doctor certifies in writing I'm incapacitated, my daughter Ashley can take that letter from the doctor and the trust. She can go to my bank. She can transfer everything into her name as trustee of my trust, and she can then continue to pay my bills and manage my assets. If she needs to deal with real property, she can have the doctor's certificate, a copy of the trust, and she can transfer the property. She can sell the property. No court involvement whatsoever. It can all be handled privately in the family through the doctor's cooperation and through the trust. Okay. If you have assets that are not in the trust, we also have a power of attorney that'll give her authority to go get that asset and put it back in the trust. Okay. If I die and I've left something out of the trust, I'm going to have a will that says I leave everything to my trust. So with some simple paperwork, you don't have to probate anything under $185,000. So if I have this bank account sitting there and I die and it's not in the trust, she can still take that will and go get that money and put it in the trust. So an estate plan is the trust, a will, a power of attorney, and a healthcare directive for medical decision making. Some other miscellaneous documents I won't go into, but we try and capture everything so nothing falls through the crack and nothing goes to the dreaded courthouse. Because you want to stay out of the courthouse if you can. Now, having said that, well, next slide, please. Okay, that was it. So, having said that, the beneficiaries of the trust are not locked out of the court system. If my daughter's managing my estate and decides to charge $100,000 trustees fee, the beneficiaries can object. And if they don't like that, they can file a petition in the Superior Court and invoke the court's jurisdiction and take it to a judge and have the judge decide whether that's appropriate or not, remove her or cut the fee or whatever. So they always have the ability to go to the court if they need it under extreme circumstances, but they don't have to. They can keep it in the family, they can keep it out of court, they can keep it private. How's my time? Do we have time for questions? I think it's pretty quick. Okay, so questions. What areas are people concerned about? Questions? Or should I prattle on? Go ahead.
So when you're, just to clarify, so when you're in a trust and there's 5 of you,
Mhm.
and there's one that's an executive, and maybe the other 4 don't agree.
Mhm.
Is that process, what is that?
Okay, so let's say we have 5 children and one of them is the trustee after I die.
Yeah.
Okay, the trustee is in charge. The trustee has to carry out the instructions in the trust. If it says 5 equal shares, the assets have to be divided in 5 equal shares. They can't say, well, I'm going to take the house and you guys can divide up the cash. You can't do that. That's one of the circumstances where somebody could go to court if they object to what's going on with the trustee. If there's a group of children and they want to get together and decide what to do, they can have a discussion. But if they're not in agreement, the trustee breaks the tie. The trustee can sell the property. So if somebody says, I want to take this property, you take that property, you take that property, and they agree, they can do that. Trustee can just divide them up, distribute the assets without selling them. But if they don't agree, if you have multiple trustees, which I always tell people never to do, if they have multiple trustees, they all have to agree because they all have authority on the estate. If they don't agree, the trust sits there and they end up getting separate attorneys and spending hundreds of thousands of dollars in litigation. So one trustee can talk to everybody, get everybody's agreement, but if they don't agree, the trustee can make the decision and go forward as long as they're equal division of the asset. Okay, good question. Others? Yes.
So if the trustee who's been appointed
Uh-huh.
dies.
Right.
How do you?
Good question. Okay, so I would appoint a succession. I would appoint my daughter Ashley, my son Zach, my daughter Elisa, maybe somebody else. Okay,
Just not.
if
all at the
Ashley
same
can't
time?
do it, or she dies, or she's sick, or she's moved to Europe, the next person becomes trustee. Ashley can simply decline. You can't force somebody to be a trustee. If you name people, that's just your choice. They don't have to do it. If they're not getting anything out of the estate, if it's a brother or something that's not a beneficiary, he might decide, I don't want to do this. Trustees get paid a fee. Okay, usually around 1% instead of 3 or 4 like in a probate. So they get paid for the work. Many times a family member will just waive it and say, well, it's family, so I won't take that fee. But if they take the fee, it's around 1% of the value of the estate because it is a lot of work. Okay.
Is it typically in the trust itself, the 1% or?
The trust will generally say a reasonable fee. You don't want to tie people's hands. If you say, well, they're only going to get $3,000, they can do it for that. You may not get people who want to serve as trustee for $3,000.
Yeah, no.
They may all decline to serve. Then you got a problem. So we don't like to restrict them too much, but it just has a reasonable fee. Generally speaking, if it went to court, the court's going to approve about 1%, depending. If it's a larger estate with a lot of rentals and they had to do tons and tons and tons of work, you can ask for larger fees. Just reasonable. It's kind of common sense. Yeah. Okay.
Still have
Yeah.
a question?
Yeah.
What is the term funding the trust?
Funding the trust, good question. Funding the trust is one of the most important aspects of creating a estate plan. So I've created this trust, I've created this document, the Osborn Trust. Now I have to do a deed to transfer my home into the name of the trust. So my deed will actually say Tom Osborn, trustee, the Osborn Trust. I go to my bank account, I open my savings, not my checking, but my savings and my CDs. I have to actually transfer the name to the Osborn Trust. That's funding. It's putting that asset in the trust. You don't fund the trust by listing assets in the trust. We don't do that. Used to do that with attachments. We don't do that anymore. When you die, what is in the trust depends on what the statements say. So we gather all the bank statements, the brokerage statements, and if it says Osborn Trust, it's in the trust. Okay. If it says Tom Osborn, nothing else, it's not in the trust. And we have to deal with that issue. Okay. So good question. And people sometimes when they do trusts online, they don't realize they have to go change things over into the name of the trust. I see that a lot. And then we have to try and fix it later. So good question. Any other question?
In the trust, am I still able to pull out equity refinance?
Yes.
Or do we wait mortgage?
Yes, you can do anything with a trust asset that you could do if it were just you. Because you are the trust. You're the trustee of the trust. You're the beneficiary of the trust. That sounds strange. You think your kids are the beneficiary, but while you're alive, you're the beneficiary. So you're the creator of the trust, you wear that hat. You're the trustee of the trust, you wear that hat. And you're the beneficiary of the trust. It's all you. So sometimes with a refi, because of secondary markets or whatever, they want you to take the property out of the trust, do the refi and put it back in. Makes no sense to me, but that's the way they do it. You can explain that when you talk.
Is there a fee to do all that?
Yeah, they're usually a couple of $100. There's this, so I got to meet with you. I got to review the trust, make sure there's no problems with the trust or the issues. And then they usually do it, the lenders usually do it, the escrows, they transfer it out. They don't always, sorry, Koka, they don't always get it back in. So we always have to look at that. I tell my clients, be sure you get it transferred back in. If they don't, they call me, we just do a new deed, we put it back in the trust. That's fairly simple. You're talking a few $100s just to take it in and out.
So putting their properties into a trust now,
Mhm.
does that trigger any type of variance on their taxes?
No. No, good question. Property taxes do not change for a transfer to a trust. They do not change for transfers between spouses. When you die and property goes to kids, that's a whole nother lecture. They have changed that law dramatically. They restricted, there used to be no change of your property taxes when you left property to a child. Now they have severely limited that. There's a lot of confusion about how it operates, but I won't go into that.
On the next
Prop
section.
19, okay? Good.
Somebody's gonna talk about Prop 19.
Oh, good.
13. So
We have an expert who will handle that. I don't have to talk about it.
we're gonna get a lot of information here today.
Okay.
What, how come no one, met with my wife and I when we built our custom home? None of their business. And now if I die, and my wife doesn't know, I mean, and, someone else could claim it. Well, who came up with that? I don't. What I'm saying is when we built that house and, now someone else is in it, the bank, someone else. Why? I don't want that.
Not
Just
sure who's in
our
your house,
business.
but if it's your house and your name's on the title, if
Yeah.
it's your house, nobody else can take it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
but-
And if you put it in a trust, the trust owns it, but you own
She
the
looks
trust.
like has a lot of money.
That's why you guys are all here.
So,
So I can get business. Just kidding.
Chad, are you assuming that somebody takes over the title of the house?
Yeah,
Is that
I
what
mean,
you-
I,
so
where did
that's
that?
people-
Okay, so if you create a trust and it's in your two names
Yeah,
and you both die, in your trust, you will have chosen someone to carry out your
yeah, but it's
instructions.
none of their business.
Well, somebody has to do it because you're gone.
Well, who came up with this
Well, then,
so-called plan? How
That's all.
long, how old is it?
well, it's been in.
Oh, centuries. People have been doing trusts forever. Wealthy people have been using revocable trust as their first step in estate planning forever. Because you think about it, if you both die and there's nobody on title to your home, somebody has to be appointed to transfer it to your
Yeah, but it's no
kids.
one's business. Why? Who made that?
So what would happen then? The house just sits there?
To the state.
The house would go to the state, the city would take it over. We'll
Yeah.
carry on that discussion offline.
Yeah, you're gonna, we
Well,
can
That's more
discuss that,
answer for
but
that.
so it isn't gonna go to the state and it isn't gonna go to strangers and it isn't gonna go to the bank. The person you have chosen to be your trustee
Yeah, but
after you.
it's no one else's business.
No, it's not
It
anybody else's.
wasn't when we built the home.
No, it's nobody else's business while you're alive. And when you die, it's the trustee's business to
Yeah.
take care of your family. And that's it. It's
But
all in your
that-
family.
I'm against that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that, Dad.
Do we have one more or am I running? out of-
Yeah, we're running out of time. 'cause,
Okay.
The next person.
Let me talk to you afterwards, okay? I'll get you. On 4 more minutes? Oh, go ahead.
Where, like, say, the assets of the family.
Thank you.
Of the kids too?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, you just put your own assets into it. They'd have to do their own trust. So your trust only controls what you own and you put it into the trust and you're the trustee of it. If the kids put money into the trust, they're just making a gift to you. Okay? Because they're not the owners of the trust. Yeah, that's more complicated because then you're talking about the stock and stock ownership and it's an S corp. There are rules for ownership of S corp stock. That's complicated. So there are ways to do it, but it's more complicated and there are tax considerations too. So, okay. Any else? Anybody else?
What else can you put in a trust? Cars and maybe
Generally, we don't, so we put the house, we put liquid assets, cash, stocks, almost anything else, not cars, because they don't go through probate anyway. And it just confuses the insurance companies when they see a trust, and you don't have to do that. You do not put in retirement accounts. Retirement accounts, IRAs, 401ks, those things, they are paid to the beneficiary. Okay? If I have a savings account and I don't have any beneficiary on it, when I die, it's going to go into my trust and be paid to my beneficiaries. Retirement accounts, because there's tax on them when you take the money out, they're tax sensitive. They're paid to the beneficiary. The trust can be the beneficiary. A lot of reasons we don't like to do that. You usually name your spouse and your adult kids as the beneficiaries. And when you die, they just go collect that on the side. It's not part of the trust usually, unless we're talking about a large estate, a large asset.
I think this is a weird question, but if that beneficiary dies before you.
Mhm.
And then you don't put it in the trust, obviously, there's reasons not to.
So let's say there's a large IRA with $1 million and a single person has named their child as the beneficiary. And when the parent dies, the child already died the week before.
Yes.
Now there's no beneficiary. has to be probated. And if there is a trust over here and there's nothing on that, there will be a pour over will, which will say anything that I didn't get into the trust, including that IRA, will go to the trust, but it will go to the trust at the end of the probate process. So the worst of all possible worlds. It's tax deferred, you're gonna pay tax, you're gonna wait a year to get it, it's gonna go through all these expenses. So what we like to do is have, just one second, we like to have the child as the beneficiary and the trust as the successor.
Okay, got it.
So it will go, and sometimes you use the trust for management. There are small children, you know, the IRA isn't gonna go to a 6-year-old. So we have it go into the trust and the trustee manages it.
And in his question about, you know, I don't want to be in business, I have a quick question, because I said the state of reality, will the state of California try and find the closest relative, is that what could happen?
If,
In his particular- you know what I'm saying?
if there's no beneficiaries and there's no heirs,
Yeah.
yeah, somebody called the public administrator will get involved and they will look for heirs until they find one. And then they'll pay it to the heirs. Yeah, they'll do a probate. Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for listening.
Dave has a question.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I'm so sorry. I just got this,
Online?
they're joining us
Okay,
on the live stream. If someone has a joint bank account as well as separate bank accounts, do you fund all the trusts? Okay, through that, I got cut off. Through that,
I think I know what they're asking.
each of the bank accounts.
Yeah, so if you create a trust, you want to use the trust. The trust will provide for the property going to your spouse, just like the joint bank account does, but it will also provide what happens if your spouse dies before you. It will provide backup or contingent beneficiaries. So that account's never left floating out there if you're both killed in a car accident. A lot of people say, well, I have a joint account, it's going to go to my spouse, I don't need anything else. They die in a car accident. Now there's no beneficiary in the account, there's no owner in the account, and it might have to be probated. So we try and pick it up with the pour over will. It's under 185, we can slide it in without a probate. But some people like to use beneficiary designations, but if you have an account that has son John as a beneficiary and the trust leaves everything to Mary, and then you put the account in the name of the trust, now you have a trust that says Mary and a beneficiary that says John, and you've got a lawsuit.
Yeah.
So we like to coordinate everything, either
Yeah.
put it all in the trust or have a bunch of contingent beneficiaries if you're going to use that to do it. Kind of defeats the purpose of the trust to leave an account out with a beneficiary. Might as well have it go into the trust and have the trust say that account goes to this person or that amount of money goes to this person. So everything's held by the trustee in one place.
Who can make up this thing? I don't like it. I don't
Well, you
like
don't have to use it.
It's no one's business what I do with my money.
You're right.
And if then who knows? She might die tomorrow.
Right.
And you know.
And she would have all the money
And
and
then
it would be up to her.
but she'd be dead.
Okay. Well, then where do you want it to go?
No one's business.
But where do you want it to go?
I don't need to tell you.
Okay. Don't tell me.
Yeah, so-
Don't tell Koka either. Okay. We'll leave this here.
Sure. Which,
Thank you very much.
thank you so much.
Yeah,
Okay. We're going on to the, where is Jesse?
He didn't make it look bad.
Who did?
We're going to the next speaker.
Okay.
Okay, am I too loud here? Susan Shelley. Where are we going?
Hi, Tess. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Are we ready to start? I'm not hearing you. Ready to go. Okay. Well, hi, everybody. My name is Susan Shelley. I'm the Vice President of Communications for the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association. And let me tell you a little bit about HJTA, which you can find online at hjta.org, Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association, hjta.org. This is the group that put Proposition 13 on the ballot in 1978. Howard Jarvis was the man who tried 5 times to do something about skyrocketing property taxes and finally succeeded in collecting enough signatures to put an initiative on the ballot to fix what was going wrong in California, which is a huge achievement. If you think about it, it was a grassroots effort, not a lot of big money behind it or special interests, certainly not. And what it did was fix the property tax system in California so that people were not taxed out of their homes by rising real estate values because no one can control rising real estate values. And people had bought homes for one price, and a few years later, they were worth 2 times, 3 times, 10 times what they paid, and they were getting reassessed to market value. Even though nobody's income had gone up, and maybe it had even gone down if they were in retirement, and suddenly they're getting annual tax bills for a home that's 10 times what they paid for it, and they owe the state tax rate or the local tax rate, the combined tax rate, which was a statewide average of 2.67% on the market value of their home every year as a condition of keeping it. Now, if you can imagine paying 2.67% of the market value of your property every year, how long could you keep it? For a lot of people, we'd all be in Texas. We'd all be in Florida. We'd all be somewhere else because we'd be priced right out of California by inflation and prices rising out of everyone's control. What did Prop 13 do? Well, first thing it did was cut the tax rate. So no more 2.67%. Now it was 1%, statewide, capped, with just a little bit extra for bond debt that previously existed or was later approved. But basically, 1% is the property tax rate. And it capped the increase in the assessed value so that for as long as you owned your property and the ownership didn't change, your assessed value could not rise with inflation. It could not rise with the market. It could rise no more than 2% a year, no matter what. It was capped at 2% a year. So the rate of inflation with a cap of 2% is how much your assessed value can go up. Obviously, the longer you've owned your property, as property values around you have gone up, the better that is for you because you know what your property tax bill is going to be. And you don't have to think, I have no idea. The neighbor sold the house for some incredible amount of money. They put in marble counters and their home sold for whatever, and my home's going to be reassessed to match that. You don't have to worry about that. You have Prop 13, and Prop 13 is protecting you. And Prop 13 also has other provisions that make it harder to raise other taxes because they certainly knew at the time that if you capped property taxes, all these governments would look for loopholes and ways around it. So it caps other sorts of taxes and requires a local vote for the first time on local taxes. So it used to be that the city council or the county board of supervisors could raise taxes, but now local tax increases have to go on the ballot for voter approval, which is a big taxpayer protection. So the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association is in the legislature, it's in the courts, it's on the ballot fighting for taxpayers, fighting to protect Prop 13 because there's always an effort brewing to try and cut into it or hack it up or destroy it. We're there to protect it and make sure that you're not taxed out of your property. And that's what the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association does. It's a nonprofit organization, member supported, and you can be a member for just $15 a year. It's very low. And you get our Taxing Times newspaper, and we'll keep you up to date on all the things going on that affect your property. Because a lot of times you can read the LA Times, you can read the Orange County Register, you can read any paper in the state, and they're not really looking out for taxpayers, are they? They're not really telling you what's going on. It's all about how your money can help somebody else. And it's not about how you can protect your family. So if you want to protect your family, you should join the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association and stay up to date with what's going on with your money. Very important. Hang on a second here. Oh, never mind. So, what is Prop 19? Well, what happened after Prop 13 passed is that a few years went by and people were inheriting property. And because the value had gone up and an inheritance was a change of ownership, under Prop 13, properties were reassessed when the ownership changed. But if that was within the family, that could be very, very crushing if the value had gone up and then the property tax bill would go up and the kids who were inheriting their parents' property couldn't pay the taxes. So there was a statewide outrage about this situation that was so intense that the legislature fixed it. The legislature passed unanimously, an exclusion from reassessment for parent-child transfers. And this applied to the principal residence, whatever the value, and up to $1 million of other property, assessed value of other property. So if you had a long-held business that was assessed at less than $1 million, you could transfer that property from parent to child or the other way without reassessment. That was Proposition 58. It passed unanimously in the legislature to get on the ballot. And once it was on the ballot, it passed with 75% approval. That was 1986. 75% approval. And now it's gone. It's gone. Where did it go? Well, in 2020, the legislature and the California Association of Realtors and the California Professional Firefighters Association got together and they decided to get rid of it. So they hid the reversal of this inside Prop 19, which appeared to be about helping seniors move to a new home and helping fire victims and helping disabled people move to a new home without getting reassessed. And it did all those things, and that was great. But what it also did was raise property taxes on inherited property. So under Prop 19, the exclusion is gone. And the way it works now is upon transfer from parent to child, child to parent, upon transfer of the property, it is reassessed to full market value with only narrow exceptions. The exception is for the parent's principal residence that the child moves into within 1 year and makes that residence their principal residence, you can get an exclusion of $1 million of extra value. So for example, if the home is assessed at $300,000 because it's been long in the family, and it's assessed at $300,000 and it's worth $1,300,000, there would be no tax increase because you get $1 million of extra value excluded from reassessment on top of the current assessed value. So if it was assessed at $300,000, it's worth $1.3 million. You get your $1 million break, no tax increase. If it's worth more than $1.3 million, then everything above that reassessed to market value and added to the old assessment. However, this is only for the principal residence of the parent that becomes the principal residence of the child, and only if the child moves in within 1 year and stays permanently. It doesn't have to be the same child. If there are like 4 eligible children, any one of them can move in. Any one of them can move out and another one can move in. But somebody who's eligible for that transfer has to stay in the house or else it's reassessed. So in other words, if that child moves in, makes it their permanent residence, gets a job out of town for 2 years and wants to keep the house, once it's not that person's principal residence, it is reassessed to market value and you cannot get reassessed to market value as of the date of transfer and then 2% a year. So you can't get that break back again. You must stay permanently. So this is essentially awful for people. This is awful. And if somebody inherits a duplex, a vacation home, a rental property, a business property, no exclusion at all. When it's transferred from parent to child, reassessed to current market value, and the new tax bill is 1% plus the bonds and the extras, 1% of that new market value. And then that is protected under Prop 13 and can only go up 2% a year. But this is a monstrous tax increase, and it is wrecking the estate plans of so many people. And one in November, it barely passed. The government offices were closed. People they didn't even know about it and they couldn't do anything about it. And before everybody looked around, they were getting these supplemental tax bills for these enormous amounts of money on inherited property. And it's hideous. And we would very much like to change it. We're working with the legislature to see if we can get anything to help people before it's changed. The legislature doesn't want to change it. They liked it. They did it to people. They're the ones that hid it inside Prop 19 and arranged for this. And that's where we are on that. So there are a few, there's some legislation that's been passed to help people if they're in a care facility so that their home that they may not move back to is still considered their principal residence for this purpose. So that legislation is already passed. And legislation is pending that would allow siblings, normally there's no exclusion from reassessment for brother to sister or sister to brother transfers. But there would be one created with this new legislation, if it passes, that allows people who are in that situation to have a year to transfer the property from one to the other without having half the house reassessed, which normally would be the case. So that was Prop 19 on the 2020 ballot that took away that tax break. And that's why it's so important when you're planning your estate, when you're planning for the future, to think about who's going to inherit the property and will it be reassessed, and how are you going to provide for the minimum hit on your family to the extent that you can. Putting it in a trust, let me just say this straight out, doesn't help you with property taxes. The assessors look through the trust, just like it's made of glass, to see who the beneficial owners are. So the present beneficial owner, if it doesn't change, there's no reassessment. If you put your assets in your own trust, which you control for your benefit, that's not a reassess situation. But if a trust transfers from parent to child because of a death, it's not the case that it's not a reassessment. It counts as a reassessment because the assessors look through the trust. So while a trust protects you for many situations, it does not protect you from property tax reassessment. So bear that in mind. Anytime you change the ownership on a title, whether it's in the event of estate planning or it's just a transfer, or someone decides they're going to put someone on the title for ease of transfer later, once you change the title, you are subject to reassessment of that percentage of the property. So be very cautious if you change a title on real estate in California. There are property tax implications to that. There's an exception for spouses, so that's one situation. And in some cases for co-tenancy, there's an exception. But check it out before you change the title, because it can be a very expensive mistake if you don't. And with that, I am happy to take your questions. I heard you with an echo. And now I'm not hearing you at all.
All right, there you go.
There we go.
Question that I wanted to ask would be, if you put, you're on a regular and there's no trust, and if you want to do a trust, would there be a reassessment on that property tax?
Not if the ownership is the same. Even though you're putting the ownership in a trust, if the present beneficial owner of the property is the same, there's no reassessment. But if the present beneficial owner changes, if the children control the trust, for instance, the parent puts the property in a trust which is controlled by the children, then that would be a change of ownership.
Oh, I see. Well, okay. Based on what the value is, right?
Right.
You guys said that, right?
Yeah, I'm not, you guys. I know my wife is opposite. I mean, what you're telling me is a total stranger, you're gonna get all the money if I don't talk to her or vice versa.
Okay.
So someone else gets the money. Why? That's.
We'll talk about that.
Is there any other
No,
question?
but who came up with this? Yeah, well,
You know,
you're gonna
if
take
I-
away my, you're gonna take away my $4 or $5 million home. You're gonna take that money that I've worked for all my life, and now it's in your hands. How can that be good?
all right, we'll do a special,
For you.
for you. And we'll have Susan, like, talk to you about that, but there will be a fee. They still have to make money.
Fee, huh?
I'm just kidding.
So- Listen, you gotta pay
He
me.
doesn't understand. It's okay.
All right,
Come here.
is there any other questions so far?
Come here, Dad. Sorry. Sorry. Sorry.
What's up?
Come on up, Dad. Come on up. Explain it to me.
When it comes to, yeah, I get it.
Okay, I saw Dave's question in the chat. there's a $1 million
I'm sorry.
limit. I saw Dave's question in the chat. Happy to answer that.
Okay, there's a question for Dave. I don't know what the question was.
I saw the question. The question was about the $1 million limit on there's not a limit on the transfer. You can transfer obviously the property any way you want to. The limit is on how much of the value of the property is excluded from reassessment. So for example, let's say you have a $5 million property and you have a $1 million exclusion, then you would have $4 million that's not excluded, and that would be assessed at $4 million. But your $1 million, if you have the exclusion, the $1 million would stick with the old property tax assessment. So let me explain it again. Let's say you have someone who owns a home that's valued in the current market value $1.3 million. The assessed value is $300,000 because it's been in the family a long time. So when that is transferred, if it's the principal residence of the parent and it becomes the principal residence of the child, it's eligible for an exclusion from reassessment, but the exclusion is limited to $1 million. So as long as the home is not worth more than the assessed value, which in our example is $300,000, plus $1 million, which makes it 1.3, if it's not worth more than that, there's no reassessment. It stays with the old assessed value. The tax bill doesn't change. If it's worth more, you still only get the $1 million excluded. So let's say it's worth $2.3 million. Well, now you get $1.3 million excluded, and you've got an extra $1 million of value, which will be reassessed at market value. And that amount, 1% of $1 million, which is $10,000, will be added to the tax bill on the property that you had before, the old tax bill. So now you've got a tax increase of $10,000, even though it was the parent's principal residence and the child moved into it. And Prop 19 was sold as allowing parent-child transfers in that circumstance. It's capped at $1 million.
At $1 million. Okay, got it. Do you have a question? Thank you.
Sure.
You have a question, sir?
Yeah, is that assessed value the original cost of the property?
It's the original cost plus the 2% adjustment for inflation every year. So you have what's called a trended base year value. If your base year value is, let's say, 1980, but it went up 2% in 1981, and it went up 2% in 1982, you're not paying taxes on your original price, but you're paying taxes on your trended base year value with those adjustments.
And does the state compile that calculation and tell you, or how does that work?
It's from the county assessor's office. The county assessor does the valuations of the property. And you can be reassessed for new construction under Prop 13. So let's say you add an extra bedroom, or you make a garage apartment, or you add an ADU, you'll be reassessed at market value for the new construction. But if you're just doing remodeling that's substantially the same, like replacing the kitchen counters with something equivalent, you don't get reassessed for that. But you would get a partial reassessment, not the whole property reassessed, but just the new construction part of it. That extra value would be added to your trended base year value assessment. So that's a situation where if you don't change the ownership, you can still see a tax increase, but not on the whole property.
You have a question, Stephen? Okay, I have a question. This is probably a little bit outside of the scope. I don't know if you can answer this. So can you kind of explain so far when, let's say, a parent tries to sell the property, bought the property at 300,000, let's say. Now it's worth $1 million. So with the exemption, can you, when they want to sell, what are the tax consequences on this?
Are you asking about capital gains tax or
Capital
property
gains
tax?
Yes, capital gains tax.
Capital gains tax. I'm not an expert on this, but I believe there's a $250,000 exclusion from capital gains tax
From each person.
for each person. I think every if you've lived in the house 2 out of the last 5 years, I think you're eligible for that capital gains tax exclusion, but that may not be up-to-date information. The tax laws change, so
Yeah, as far as I
yeah.
know, if it's 250 for each person,
Right.
husband and wife,
right.
would be 500. So over and above that, with a 500, there will be a tax.
There will be capital gains. And that's California and federal.
Count.
California taxes capital gains as ordinary income. So all of a sudden you're rich and you're taxed at the 13.3% tax rate
Sure.
for your capital gain.
And another thing, I don't know if you can answer this, since I'm here already and we could ask the question.
Mhm.
What if, for instance, that you are 55 and older and you bought the home for 300, now you want to buy a 700 based on what we have right now on pricing for property taxes? What is the consequences on that?
Well, I'm very glad you asked because this is a really good tax break. This was the good part of Prop 19. If you are 55 or older, you can sell your house and move to a new house and take your base year tax with you. So if you have a $300,000 assessment on your home, you can move anywhere in the state and buy a new home. And if the value is the same or less as the home you just sold, the market value. So if you sold the home for $1 million, never mind that it's assessed for less. If you sold the home for $1 million and you buy another home for $1 million, you just take your $300,000 assessment with you to the new home.
Mhm.
So you have to fill out forms. It's not automatic. You have to fill out forms from the assessor's office. To get that, it's called a senior transfer, senior base year value transfer, I think is what it's officially called.
Is there a time limit for that, for the submission?
There is, and I don't know what it is. A good place to get answers to specific questions in individual circumstances is the Board of Equalization website. So go to boe.ca.gov and click the link for information on Prop 19. And all the questions about moving after a disaster, taking your value to a new home, transferring from parent to child, the different circumstances of the $1 million exclusion, all those details are on the Board of Equalization website in their frequently asked questions about Prop 19.
Is there any other questions so far? Susan, you're always so dynamite when we're doing this. Thank you so much for your time. And we'll be looking forward to another one. Okay?
Thanks
Thank
so
for
much
your
for
time.
including me. Great to
All
see
right.
everybody. Take care.
Okay.
And be sure to join the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association, hjta.org. Thanks.
Okay, perfect.
Bye.
So now, here we go. We have Sandra, right?
Martha.
Martha. Calling you Sandra.
That's
I don't know.
okay.
Martha Shanks, so talking about lending. Huh? The echo. Yes,
Good point.
yeah.
Hello, hello. So it's. Susan. Okay. Okay,
I want to be sure they can see you right there.
thank you. Okay, understood. So, just,
one second.
oh, yeah, oh, yeah.
Okay, Martha is actually partnering with, where's Koka? Koka Marchello.
He's outside.
He's coming, and, they are with Fairway Mortgage, really good, and you are with same thing, right?
Yeah, I'm with that branch.
Yeah,
Huh?
the branch.
and I work
as far as
together.
that. Okay, perfect. A lot of information that she can give you.
Yes. And when Koka gets back, what I'll let him do is do any additional information just about Fairway. We both work at Fairway. We both work in the San Dimas office. Love it there. I have been doing loans since 2005, and I've been doing reverse only for about the last 6 years. So this is all I work on. Okay, click new slide, I guess I'll say. Oh, I'm doing it.
Angel, this slide. There you go.
Okay. So, sorry, the last couple, would you like?
Hi,
to-
I'm Koka. I work with Martha Shanks. I do mortgages. I do the front side mortgages. Any questions you have on that? If you want to do something before an estate moves in a certain direction, you need advice on that. That's what I do. Part of our services is our reverse mortgage team, and Martha Shanks been doing this. This is what she does for a living. And she's the right person to ask any questions to take away all the myths and the false information that you may be hearing about reverse mortgages for the right scenario and the right situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Koka. That was excellent. That was excellent. I'm glad you showed up right there. So, the next couple slides are probably not the most exciting slides, but they're kind of what we see in our industry right now. That in the sense of a crisis, potentially concern about retirement. So we as Americans are living longer. I have one that I just completed, and the wife was 96. And she said to me, my sister lives in Peru and is 111. And I had to get out my calculator and go, oh my God, how old is that? Okay, you were born in your sister was born in 1913. Yes. I'm like, wow. So we have people that are living longer. Maybe we come into our retirement years with some debt that we haven't quite paid off. People are having fewer pensions, fewer defined pensions. And in some cases, those pensions die with one of the spouses. So then with that same situation, the husband died and the pension died with the husband. So now the wife is left without one Social Security check. She loses one of those and she loses the pension. So we have some of these things going on that people may not be prepared for when they start their retirement process. And then it says, like I said, more than 3/4 show up with some level of debt when they come into their senior years. Next slide, please. So this slide is a little more specific, and that is something that I probably see every year. I see one of these issues, which is, maybe somebody's got a significant house repair. They have been living in the house for several years. They've got roofing problems that need to get fixed. They have what's called a life-changing event. Maybe they fall down. One particular client right now is 99, fell, broke her hip and broke her shoulder. So she's now bedbound, and we're trying to figure out, are you going to move back into your house where a reverse would happen, or are you going to move into a care facility? Expenses, maybe one or both of the spouses begin to experience some deteriorating health, dementia, that kind of thing. So we see that. We've got long-term care needs. Are you going to do it outside the home or inside the home? These are all the things that get discussed. And then suffer a loss. So somebody, like I said, loss of a spouse and income just happened to one of my clients. And so again, losing the Social Security check plus the pension. So now she's got to reevaluate. And thank goodness we got that loan closed before. So, okay, next slide. So just a quick understanding, what is a reverse? It is for our senior set. The most popular one starts at age 62, although I have some options below that at 55. It allows them to convert a percentage of their home equity into tax-free cash. And the way that works is you take a look at the value of the property, the age of the youngest borrower, and you can access the equity that is available. Now, we also have to layer on top of that a loan amount if you've got a loan on there, but the rest of that you can access. So that's kind of how we work it. Every scenario is different. Every person's different. What are their goals? Those are the kind of things we want to look at. You have no monthly principal payment. That is always going to be optional. So if you're living with a reverse or if you're living with a regular loan now and you put a reverse on there, you no longer have to pay that mortgage payment, but you can, and there's reasons to. So there's always kind of reasons to consider it. Lastly, what's really important is we've got to always make sure our property taxes and our insurance is paid for. So we heard a little bit about that previously, about the use of property taxes. So you always have to make sure those are up to date. If you won't, you will foreclose. So it's the same with any kind of loan. Next slide, please. The most popular one is called the FHA loan, or you also see it referred to as the home equity conversion. We probably do 90% plus. It's guaranteed by the government. So if you run into any issues with it, they will cover the cost. So for example, if your loan amount grows greater than the value of the property, they will guarantee it and cover that at the time that you leave the home. Okay, that's probably the biggest thing that we get asked about. This started in 1989. Right now, the max you can claim as far as value is just over 1.2 million. So that's actually gone up significantly, probably in the last 5 years. And it's hard to explain, but if you have a house that's worth 1.5, the value you can use on that calculation is 1.2 and some change. So that's kind of what we use to determine how much you can get out of the property. We have other loans that we can use. So if you have a $2 million house, $3 million house, I've got a different type of reverse mortgage that's out there in the marketplace. We've done many amendments to help improve this product. I know maybe people feel like they've heard bad news about it, and we've done a lot. Next slide, please. So what's important here is that we have improved the product over time. We've added, well, it came with a non-recourse feature, which is what I was talking about, which is if the loan amount ends up greater of value when you leave the home, that's actually guaranteed by FHA to get paid. And so your heirs won't be impacted by that. You must receive counseling from a third-party source, so not from me. So I'll spend a lot of time talking to you, and then you go to a third party who will make sure you understand what I said. And I really haven't had anybody fail that. So it's a nice way to make sure that you understand what you're doing. We have what are called initial disbursement limits. It just says you can take out this much in the first 12 months. It's actually a good guideline. We found that to be good. We actually do a financial assessment. We make sure that you can still live in the house once you have a reverse mortgage. Again, another add so that we don't see foreclosures and bankruptcies with reverse mortgage. We have what's called non-borrowing spouse protection. So if you're 75 and you're married to a 55-year-old, you can actually get into a reverse mortgage, and there's protections for that person and that spouse even at age 55. So a little bit different functionality, but it's still, they can stay in it in their entire life. And then lastly, we have a line of credit function that I'll describe later. That's kind of our secret weapon. It's actually a really great part of the product I'll describe. So next slide, please. So I'll run through these pretty quickly. How can you use it? How can you use these? So you can do a single disbursement, lump sum. Next slide, please. I'm used to doing it myself. You can do a fixed monthly advance. Okay, you could take $2,000 out a month. Next slide. Up, back. There's one. Okay, wait. Ooh. There you go. There we go. Okay. So we talked about a fixed amount. So when you close it, you get one amount, and that's the amount you get. Or you can do a monthly advance, or you can do a line of credit. So I just closed one. They took an amount at the beginning. They have a line of credit, and in May they're probably going to start the product. It's FHA. You can call up anytime and make those changes. And so it's nice because for, I think it's $25, you can make that switch and say, you know what, I only want to take $1,500 a month or $2,500, depending on what your scenario is. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. So this is secret weapon number one, and it's called a line of credit. So this isn't like your HELOCs that you just go to the bank for, Wells Fargo or US Bank. Not that they're bad, it's just their type of loan. What happens is when you get that line of credit set up, if you have the right scenario, that will grow over time. So whatever your loan balance is as far as your interest rate, it's going to grow on the line of credit. This is how the product was built. So if you have $100,000 in your line of credit and you have a 6% interest rate, you'll have 106,000 in that line of credit the next year. So this is different than what you're going to get at, your regular banks. And it gives you, they built it for seniors. So if you put it in early, that line of credit's growing. And over time, it'll double. I mean, this is a really great way for the younger seniors to get into a reverse mortgage and have it available to them in their later years. It's secure. So it can't be capped, it can't be frozen, which some of us probably saw that in 2008, where our line of credit was cut, it was frozen, it was, can't do that with this product. It's also liquid, so you can use money in it, you can pay it down, and you can use it again. So it can be like, I hate to put it like this, but it's like your personal account. So we have people who do that. They use it for what they need. Once they get more money in, they put it, because it's growing at whatever the prevailing rates are right now. So it's growing at 6 or 7%. And so then you can put it back in. So the client I was just telling you about, all they really have left is a savings account of like 3%. So I said, keep it all in the line of credit that's growing at 6 to 7% for you right now. That's a better option. So let's move on. So options for heirs. So this slide, I'm not going to go through all the details. Typically what happens when I'm working with a client and we're talking about it, the question is, what's going to happen with the heirs and what are they going to want to do? And the question is, do they want to keep the house or do they want to sell the house? Typically they have an answer already in mind. We want to keep the house or we want to sell the house. So we structure it and understand what that means. And if they want to keep the home, what they're going to do when the parents pass away is they're going to pay off whatever that loan amount is, and they will have access. The rest of the equity would be theirs already. So then they would go ahead and refinance into their name, okay? If they're going to go ahead and sell the home, then they would go ahead and sell it, and whatever equity's left after they've sold the home would be split between the heirs, okay? Now, kind of a weird thing is if the loan amount is greater than the value of the property, they can actually come in and buy it at 95% of the value of the property. So that's a little kink in there that's kind of nice. And a lot of people did that in Florida in 2008 because all the values dropped so much. And so they were able to get in there and buy some of that property cheap and for 95% of value. So actually a lot of heirs at that point did that. So the key question here is, what do you think your heirs are going to want to do? And I talk directly to the heirs. What do you want to do? We're going to sell. Well, so-and-so wants to buy it. Then I have to say to them, okay, you've got to figure out how you're going to do that and how you're going to pay off. I mean, they have to go through some, math to figure out, and it's through the estate planning if they want to do that. Okay. Key point here though, if the loan amount is greater than the value of the property, the heirs will not be hurt. Okay, so that's just an important point about this. Okay, move ahead. Next slide, please. So I kind of want to end on a little bit of a happy note, and that is, in the old days, I think when you saw it on TV and everything, it was loan of last resort. It was for people who are in financial distress. We've all seen those commercials. What I really want you to know is we really use it now as much more of a financial tool. And kind of a lot of folks that have been in the business a long time say setting it up as soon as possible is the best, because particularly with that line of credit that grows over time. So you put it in place, you let it sit there, maybe use it for things. We'll talk a little bit about what we can use it for. And then, but you use it for the last and remainder of your years and if you need it. So next slide. So a couple of these are just why I do this and why I do 100%. So this is a client of mine that I did probably now 4 years ago. She was a tough client, a few tears, like, did she really want to do this, right? But she ended up on a camel in Egypt. So one of her big things, what she wanted to travel. So she took some of that money from that line of credit and used it and sent me that picture. And I said, okay, I'm going to use that picture. So next one. Next slide. Yeah. So this next couple, they lived in Highland Park, California, and they found this house on the internet in Prescott, and they said, for this house, we'll move out of California. So they sold their house in Highland Park, and they used a reverse mortgage to purchase this. So that's another way to use this product, is with a purchase. And that was their choice and their dream house. And Now they want to put an elevator in it. So I'm like, okay. Okay, next slide. So I'm not going to go through all the details here, but how a reverse mortgage can help. Top line item, it improves your cash flow. So a couple things. If you have a mortgage already in place, your mortgage becomes optional. Okay. The other way to do it is if you have a line of credit, you can start pulling from that, and that will also increase. So give you an example. If you have $1,000 mortgage payment every year, you've got $12,000 back in your cash flow for your quality of life, anything you want to add to your life. So that automatic plus anything you might get out of the line of credit. Every scenario is different. So we always have to look at, okay, what are the goals and what are you trying to accomplish? Next slide. So this is kind of where we get into one of the questions I know Tess wanted me to answer. So what can you use it for? We have people using it for medical expenses and long-term care. Renovation, just finished one up where significant roofing and framing issues. And they were able to utilize those resources to get that done because they really didn't have other resources to do that. Large purchases like a car. When we talk about and more, that can be used for your children. Maybe a down payment, maybe helping people with education, all of it. It's all up to you what you want to use this money for. Okay, so that's the point. In some cases, it's for themselves. In some cases, it's to live. In some cases, it's for the grandkids. And as they say, you want to give with a warm hand and not a cold hand. So that's one of the things that you're allowed to do, and it works in your favor with a reverse mortgage. Okay, next slide. So we get people who want to consolidate their debt if we have the opportunity, pay off a car, things like that, so then they don't have that monthly payment anymore. The kind of line item number 3 is that we can actually use it to help convert your Roth IRAs. That's one of the things that I've had people do because these are tax-free dollars. It's considered a loan. So we will have people who will use the reverse mortgage to pay the taxes on any conversion from a regular IRA into a Roth. So there's just lots of ways to go through this. And then using it, the fourth one is using the line of credit to hedge against declining home values as well as inflation. Okay, so one of the things, hopefully our inflation is abating us at this point, but we have seen significant increases in our expenses, and you would have this additional bucket of dollars to be able to use for whatever your needs are. So that's one of the things. And when you put this in place, the line of credit starts. It doesn't matter what your value becomes. Okay, so if our values decline, our line of credit keeps building. It's not tied to the value. So if we suddenly saw, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but if we suddenly saw a decline in values in Southern California and your house dropped from 7 to 500,000, it doesn't matter. Your line of credit is still going to grow at the interest rate that it is. So it could go past it and you could still take the money out. So it's a crazy scenario, but they have built it just, to protect seniors. Okay, next slide. So just a quick kind of secret weapon number 2 that I love about this product is being able to purchase with one. So we get to purchase a home with it. I showed you the castle in Prescott, Arizona. That's what you can use it for that purpose. I won't go into details. Next slide. So just a couple of things, because I knew we had Tom here. Couple of slides just in working with attorneys and other topics. This can help people maintain their independence. They can stay in their home. They can use it for long-term care and other care needs. And then also use it for helping them for navigating future. So back to that slide, you could downsize into a condo and use the resources from your home to put onto what we call a HECM for purchase. So there's a million different ways when you're working with that elder care trust guy that he can help you kind of think through, well, what's going to be the best use of your dollars along with your financial planner. Okay, next slide. So for tax planning, one thing to keep in mind, this is non-taxable dollars, okay? So if you're trying to also limit your tax, what you owe in taxes for any reason, like if you're taking money out of your IRAs, you can use these dollars instead. So in fact, if your IRA is going down, you can pull dollars from your reverse, which are tax-free for your income during the time that you're tax dollars. So you're not locking in your losses, right? So if your account drops, you maybe have to take the RMD, but you don't want to take any more. So it gives you an opportunity to balance where your dollars are coming from. And these are literally tax-free dollars, which is a nice, which is another nice element to this product. Okay, next slide. This is a huge issue that I see a lot, and that is long-term care. How are we going to pay for it? So you can either use the resources to help pay for the insurance premiums, and then, or like pay for it in, like it says, in absence of other planning. So I have a client right now kind of up in Northern California, and the 99-year-old may come home and she just doesn't have enough money for the monthly costs associated with taking care of her. So we're thinking about, okay, we'll use the reverse mortgage. Okay, that's their long-term care plan for that 99-year-old, right? So she's got some dollars left, but if they sell those assets, then they're going to have a tax event on those dollars. So they'd rather use the reverse mortgage. Okay. And then there's all sorts of other things down here, helping pay for any attorney fees, credit lines that are not countable as assets. Okay. So one of the other things is with Medicaid, and it's true also for Social Security and veterans, but particularly with Medicaid, if you have a line of credit, it doesn't impact your Medicaid eligibility, as long as you do it, as long as you manage it correctly. Okay, next slide. So for estate planning, this is where Tom fits in. You can use it as part of the process. You can use it right along with your other assets. I think Tom's probably the person that looks at everything. So he's looking at the IRAs, he's looking at the savings, he's looking at the house and the equity. So you want to use them all together, and come up with what's going to be your best plan. Next slide. So the only reason I put this slide in here was just to say there are times when people they might get a mortgage at 65, okay, and at 95 they're still paying, and maybe their dollars aren't going the way they had been. Maybe things are a little more expensive. So putting a reverse on there allows that person to live in that home for the remainder of their lives in the scenario that I'm describing, and kind of stave off foreclosure. It's a tough topic, but we have people that are still making payments at 75, 80, 85. They need to get out of that mortgage payment. And we just don't think about it. If we get a line of credit at 65, well, at 75, it's a fully amortized payment. So I would never recommend people be getting those unless they have enough dollars to pay it off. And so this is the type of thing that you kind of got to think about, is that person that's sitting there still making a mortgage payment, and they're slowly working through all their assets. And so this is a way, to help those people that are in that situation. Okay, next slide. Okay, that's it. It's a lot of data.
I know, that's a lot. And all the topics.
So,
Thank you very much. So I think the real question they're hearing now is in the real estate. This is really good. I know with a reverse mortgage, a lot of people have a different notation. It's very negative.
yes,
They feel like, with having a reverse mortgage, I mean, that happened to me with my mom. I mean, my aunt was recommending my mom for a reverse mortgage. The feeling was, why are we borrowing money on our own property, with
Right.
but not all of it is really for everyone. If you see an elderly that really cannot pay the mortgage and they're not working and by themselves, and it has a lot of equity, especially right now, this is a good thing. Okay. And most of the time it's the kids who will say, no, can't do it because mom, sometimes we don't want to be mean, but obviously they're thinking, okay, you're taking equity from an equity that I could own, But I think at that time, we all worked very hard. And there's that time that we also have to enjoy,
Yes.
right? And so like I said, it's not for everyone. FYI too, when you have a reverse mortgage, you still have to pay your property taxes and insurance. We have foreclosures going on that because they think like they don't have to pay, but they have to pay for taxes and insurance. That if you have that equity to borrow, then you have money. And I don't know if you touch this, you can, as a parent, you can borrow money of that equity and give as a down payment. You mentioned
Yeah.
that, right? So this is a different avenue that we could actually use. Not everyone, it's not for everyone, but it's called planning. You know, we all have to plan for our future. We work so hard, and I see everyone here that works so hard, you know, we have, you know, let our kids, you know, take over, let them work their own, and we work our own. Now let's enjoy. Then let's go shopping and go travel. Just kidding. So
Well, and I will say this, I have become a complete advocate for seniors going through this because I've seen both the kids that say, yes, I want them to do it because I want them to take care of themselves. And I've seen the kids that say, well, I don't know, it's mine, you know. And you say, well, no, you've got like 25 years to figure yourself out. Your parents don't. So it is like another bucket of money to use for the right reasons. And everybody's reasons are different. I can give you 10 reverse mortgages and the goals are completely different. So it all depends on what, you know, and you have to dig in there and say, okay, why are you doing this? What's going on? And then eventually you get to the bottom line, you go, okay, this is what we can do and how we can do it for you. And you decide if this makes sense for you. So,
and you know, the generation, the richest generation are really the baby boomers. They have a lot of equity in their home, especially
trillions.
you know, the millennials, they're very techy, they do their homework, you know, they're good too, they're slowly getting there. But a lot of the kids, if you notice, a lot of the kids are living in the parents' home right now. So, you know, this is another thing as a parent, we think about their kids, you know. They can borrow money from their equity. So
Well, and the thing to remember when you've got kids living at home, when you pass, they likely, unless they've got a really good job, I mean, this is just me seeing what I see, they're not going to be able to make those property tax payments. They're not going to be able to make, I mean, you need to set them up too. If they're living there, you got to say, okay, this is what's going to, I mean, part of this is the whole planning thing, right? What is going to happen when I pass? And trying to get them launched is a better approach because otherwise they won't even be able to pay
for the payment.
Right.
That's the thing. Right
So
now,
it's like-
it used to be 350 an average, you know, pricing for the
Right.
kids that we have right now. The average pricing is at 700,000. Let's accept that fact. And they have to do a 3.5% down payment, you know, on the
Yes.
loan on it. Really? Do you think that they can afford it? No, it's going to be very hard, you know. So as a landlord, it's great because you have rentals, but really in reality, you also want to prepare for that, you know. Well, I hope it's very helpful for everyone, unless you have anyone, you have a question?
Sorry for my English, but
Oh, no problem.
maybe write it down. My husband died last year,
Okay.
and then he is a veterans, retired Navy. And this is my question: if he is a veterans, can I put the name of my two daughters with me? Because the name of the name of the person that was involved in my house is the two of us. So my husband died, and then I'm the only one who did on my house. So as
You're
a
the only
successor-
person on the deal.
Yeah, on the house. So and I put my two daughters as a successor to my house, even though it was big.
Okay. I would say that Tom could probably answer, there's implications
Okay.
for adding, just so you know, there's implications for adding somebody.
Yeah, she came in a little late.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah, but I just wanted,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
there are implications for doing that.
For taxes.
Yeah, I think Shelley mentioned, you know,
Okay.
it could trigger a tax event, so you just want to make sure,
Yeah.
yeah.
Do you have a living trust right now?
Yeah.
Okay.
I got-
So they're the
I got a-
beneficiaries inside the living
Yeah.
trust, yeah.
I put that my two daughters for the living trust,
Yeah.
the money itself, and then I do like I attended. Sorry, because I was lost. and I came from San Bernardino.
Yeah, no problem, no
5
problem.
minutes.
It happens.
Yeah, I really like.
We'll give you the phone number of Shelley and then
Yeah.
you can, and then if you have a question, we'll
Yeah.
tell them that you can ask.
Thank you. Thank you.
And you can close in a trust. I had that written down to say, we can close in a trust. I do it, most of my loans are in a trust. Yeah.
How do I decide if something like this is right for me?
Right.
I have no heir.
Give it to me.
Piece that I'm not taking care of for, but I really don't have any direct heirs. So.
You're single.
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
It goes to your lawyer.
Yeah.
So how do you find out if something like this is right for me?
Right.
I've spent my whole life getting.
To this
things-
point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've got everything, you know.
Yeah,
I'm
set up.
pretty well set. So how do I decide if something like this would benefit me?
Right.
I'm 72 years old.
Right.
And I wanna, yeah,
Kid.
so,
But you never know.
but yeah.
Yeah.
How do I?
So,
You do.
yeah, I sit down and we do an interview process, and say, because part of it is, I mean, I'll do a bigger picture even, how much you have, are you interested in downsizing, upsizing, moving? I mean, those are all questions, right? And,
Yeah.
and where do you want to live?
Where do you want to live? Do you want to stay in your home?
Yeah.
And if you want to stay in your home, then you can stay in home, then you can get reverse mortgage. And then the question there is, if you live alone, who's gonna take care of you? Because the long-term care,
Yeah.
is very expensive, and you can do that,
Well, I have that great niece that lives with me, but she's,
Yeah.
but I want to leave from her, but I also want, well, I do enjoy myself. But it's fun.
Okay, this is perfect.
Great conversation.
So I will give you my card. Yeah, and here's the thing. I sit down and I just go through, here are your options. What are your goals? And I'll keep asking. What do you want to do? What do you want to do? And again, I think, do you want to move? I mean, it's always really important.
And so you will help me decide.
Absolutely.
When it's time to.
Yeah. Here's what the numbers look like. Yeah. Yeah.
Because I planned, but I don't know, now nobody's telling me, what do I do with this stuff now that I have it?
Okay.
And.
Do you have a financial planner?
Sort of.
Okay. Okay. We'll talk about that too, because it's,
Well, they're two same opinions.
Oh,
right?
yeah. Oh,
Heard the advantages, I heard you say you continue to pay your mortgage.
Yeah. Right.
What's the advantages?
okay. So for folks that want to, okay, they may have a job still. Okay. They may, and they want that line of credit to actually grow for them. Okay. So I have people who might make payments so that line of credit, because when you put $1,000 back into the reverse mortgage, $1,000 moves over to the line of credit. Okay. So for people who have cash, they're working, there's something there that it makes sense to do it. We will do that. Now, the fun part about a reverse is you can make one payment a year. So think about, you could make one payment a year. It could be the interest costs associated with that loan. So let's say it's $5,000 for 2024. You could just make that one payment and it would become the one payment in 1 year. You could use it on your tax returns for the interest, and it would increase your line of credit by 5,000, let's say, or whatever the number is. So you can use it, you can pay down that interest cost, right? That you and use it for yourself as well. So there's a lot of different reasons to do.
Say that you want to pay that.
Yes.
You'll add to your line of credit. Plus you can take it off the tax.
Yes.
That's a win-win.
Yes. And when people get that, they go, oh, and that one payment, you could do it once, you could do $1, you could do $100, you could do the amount of of your annual interest costs on that. I mean, like people, you kind of have to realize, oh my God, I could do a lot of different things with this. Yeah. If you've got money coming in. Yeah.
So tax havens without.
I'm talking about interest costs, but yeah, okay. So yeah, so property tax, yes. Now, if you have some credit issues going into the loan, we do a set aside. Okay, so if you've had some late payments, this is just happens, right? If you've had some late payments, we will still do the reverse, but we'll set aside dollars to make your property tax and insurance payment for you. But and there are cases people choose to do it voluntary, but most of the time, yeah, it is a little bit of a switch. You can't just have it paid for you. So,
I've got 100,000 debt for mortgage. Would it be better for me to take a lump sum, pay the mortgage off, and then I would still take payments?
So what happens with that 100,000 is when you put the reverse on, we replace it with the reverse mortgage. So let's just say in your case, right, you have 100,000 left. So what it would be worth it to you to do is to take a look at if the reverse replaces the 100,000, then what do I have as far as a line of credit? And maybe I do still pay down that 100,000. I let that line of credit grow. So now I've got a line of credit to use if and when I need it.
The interest I paid on the loan. $100,000, which is paying back 300,000. I wouldn't be better to take a lump sum and pay the loan off.
So remember, when you do that, get that lump sum, it's based on a reverse mortgage on the property. So you're not getting rid of the loan that you have, you're replacing it with a reverse. So you got to work through those machinations, but I mean, for me, for you in that regard, what you'd want to look at is what would it look like if I replaced that with a reverse mortgage, kept paying it down if I wanted to, or I'm going to end up with some form of a line of credit that's going to grow over time. So that is like, that's so valuable for us, especially if we're in our early 70s or whatever. I mean, it doesn't matter what age, but it will grow over time for you. So it becomes a bucket of dollars if you need it. And if things happen and you don't use it, it becomes equity to the heirs. Okay. So it never goes, it just goes away. Yes. And you can live to 111. Okay. So you can be there. Yeah.
So you have an existing loan. And then you go into a reverse. Does the reverse pay off the existing loan?
That's exactly
And
what
you start all over with a brand new loan?
No.
You have a reverse mortgage. That's going to pay off that 100,000 that he's talking about. And whatever else you can pull from the equity will start a line of credit for you. Okay. So if you have a mortgage on there, you gotta replace it with a reverse. Okay. You got to replace it with a reverse mortgage.
Okay, so there has to be enough equity in there to pay off your mortgage?
Yes.
And if you've got a second, pay off your
Yes.
second?
Yes.
And then whatever's left over.
Yes. You got it. Yeah.
You start drawing on.
Yeah.
And when does it get repaid? If you pass away, if you're both on the loan, you're the last one to pass away, then you've got a period of time frame, right?
Yeah, you get 6 months plus 2 90-day extensions, so it's about a year. I mean,
to have it.
but you
paid
gotta
off.
know your exit strategy.
Correct.
Yeah.
But then,
strategy.
but then who actually, and this happens a lot on the probate, when they have a reverse mortgage, when it comes to that, the parents are passed, so it's now the kids. So the kids have 6 months to either take over or sell the house. Is that right?
So they have an initial 6 months. And this is why it becomes important to talk about the exit strategy. What do you plan to do? And so they get 6 months. The 2 90-day extensions aren't difficult to grab. I'll be honest with you. I got people that do that all the time, but it is important to kind of know what that person is planning on doing and what makes the most sense.
But then the kids can apply. They cannot just take over. They have to be themselves to apply on the loan to take over the property.
Yeah, they have to
if they want
refinance. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And I mean, if you're in a trust, I guess it's the beneficiaries. So those beneficiaries could be somebody totally different, but whoever steps up and says, okay, what are we going to do with this property? Really. So
there's a question on Zoom. You want to read this?
Yeah, like got to read
the HECM.
Oh, the HECM requires
to be 62 and the mortgage to have been paid off or most of it paid off. What's the maximum loan value that can be taken out as a lump sum? And is there a cap amount of equity that can be withdrawn?
Okay, so it requires people to be 62 or 62 plus. Okay, so we understand that. Now, when they talk about mortgage to have been paid off or most of it paid off, so we don't know until we know value of the property, age of the youngest borrower. So I really can't give you a lot, because if you're 99, it's gonna be different than if you're 62. Okay, so the best thing with this is to look at, what's the value of the property? What do we think it's going to be? What's the age of the youngest borrower? And then what's the loan amount? So it all depends on those three factors in terms of how much you can take out or how much you can pay off and all that kind of stuff. I do have people sometimes where the loan amount is greater than what we can take out. So they'll bring cash to close because it's worth it for them to get rid of that mortgage payment. So I honestly have had people who've chosen to do that piece of it. And so when he says the max loan value that can be taken, it's hard to say. Lump sums, if you really are truly taking lump sums, don't recommend it. I recommend going with the line of credit. And when I present it, so if I present it to her, she'll see the lump sum version, she'll see the line of credit. I'll show her all of it so she can make that decision. We used to go with the lump sums, like on the TV commercials a long time ago. That's what they said. Okay, you can get a lump sum of $90,000. Now we are much more sophisticated with the line of credit, which is a much better option for people because they don't take what they don't need. Okay. And there's a cap. There's actually not really a cap. Okay. As long as you're in the house and you're living and you've got that line of credit, it will just grow. So you can be 111, you can be, I think the wording in the contract is 150 that they can make it due and payable. So yeah.
How many years can we get loan from the entity? Because I'm as a mother, we are newly from 2021 they sold that, but we deposited 65,000 to get lower the monthly payment. So how can we get the equity? For example, my daughter likes to get the equity, some of the equity only from the house. So can we get, even though the house is only 2021?
Yeah. So what we'd have to do is look at the numbers. I have to again, I have to see the certain key data points that tell me age, value of the property. And then we'd look at what that loan amount is and see, okay, how much of a line of credit, if any, can we get? I mean, every scenario is going to be different.
And that's for a reverse.
Thank you.
On
Oh,
a
that's
forward,
true.
yeah, on the forward side, so as an example, you paid, the house you bought was $700,000, right? And you put down $200,000, right? So you still owe $500,000. A reverse would probably not fit that scenario because the equity balance isn't probably there. So that's called taking out a second loan, like a home equity line of credit or a fixed rate second, depending on the equity that you have. So that's the second loan that you would have. So it really depends on what your loan to value is.
Okay.
And there are parameters for that.
But the monthly payment will go up.
On if you do a second or if you refinance the first and take more money out.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, that'll generally, it'll generally be a higher because we have higher interest rates right now and you're taking more money out. So two things I want to say. One is we do have a product. So for those houses that are 1.5 and above, I have a proprietary product that allows me to take it based on the value. Okay. So I did a person who was eating up $30,000 a month in care costs. And they had a house in Emerald Bay and they had a $2 million house, a $2 million lien on the property. I mean, it was crazy. And they didn't want to sell anything. And so we took out one of those proprietary loans. We paid off the $2 million loan and then we got, money for them to use for that $30,000 a month until he passed away. And then they could do their shifting that they needed to do. So I can use that proprietary product for that purpose. And then I'll reiterate the fact that doing a downsizing or a right sizing or upsizing and using the purchase product is a great way. Like if you sell a home for $1 million and you buy into a home for 500 and you use the HECM for purchase, you're not putting all 500,000 down. You're putting only what you need to put down to create the reverse mortgage. And so you get this opportunity to not, the rest of it can go to your financial planner for growth. So we do that. I do that a lot, actually. So people don't have to put all seven, because who wants a mortgage as they're leaving? I mean, that's the whole point. You say, I don't want a mortgage. I just want all cash. But when you do that, then you're putting 700 or 500 into it, as opposed to maybe not putting all of it into it, and you utilize a reverse for that purchase. So yeah, there's a lot of options. It's endless. So.
You have a question?
Actually, I want to go back to the question I asked you earlier.
Yeah.
About first and the second.
Yes.
The reverse pays that off.
Mhm.
These had specific interest rates.
Yes.
But now on reverse, you've got the current today's market.
Yes.
Interest rate.
Yes, that's right.
Would it be a good idea? Let's say, for instance, with COVID, we had like a 2% interest rate
No.
at that time.
No.
So then now, if you do, you don't want to touch that and you only want to have like an equity line, would you recommend that, or how does that work?
Okay, so we do have a relatively new product. And it's called a reverse second. Okay, and I'll tell you, it's new. And what it allows you to do is keep your first, and then based on the value of the property, you can get you can literally get a reverse second. Okay, you have to be a certain, I mean, you have to qualify, but you can get that. Now, I'm not a huge fan, because you still have to make that mortgage payment. And yeah, so I'll give you an example. I created a whole scenario for a woman who was thinking she had some bills she wanted to pay off. I'll do the second. So we went through it all. And then I said, okay, I want you to realize you still have 20 years left on your mortgage right now. And that's going to cost you $350,000. And her eyes went, and I said, yeah. And you're doing this for a $70,000 debt. I think you need to rethink. You're going to pay off that timeshare that you have, but you're going to, in order to do that, you're going to keep that first, even though you're going to get the second reverse. So I really think, I think you got to look at the individual goals of what you're trying to do. And I did that on purpose. I went through the whole thing, and then I said, just by the way, this, and her financial planner was with her, and she goes, oh, I didn't think through it like that. And I said, yeah, I mean, you really have to think about it. I go, get rid of the entire mortgage payment, because she's 77. What, 20 more years of a mortgage payment? Like, it's like, you got to think through this. This isn't, you
got that right so far. What that means is, if you have a second, you still have to pay your first, because you have a second to pay off your debt. So it doesn't make sense, because if you don't have the money to pay for the mortgage on the first, and because you're not paying on the second, on the reverse, obviously, they can't foreclose on, let's say, if you don't make the payment, because you're so used of not making the payment, but you still have to pay your first. So if you don't pay your first, then you'll have a problem.
So that, yeah, so I'm referring to this unique product, the niche product, but don't get a HELOC now, because you've got 30 years on that product. Okay. You get 50 grand or 100 grand. In 10 years, you have a fully amortized payment over 20 years. So suddenly you are what, 75 now, and you got a 20-year payment till you're 95. And maybe that jumps in from 350 to 1300. I'm just throwing numbers up.
So
Yeah.
it's time to sell the $4 million home and downsize and call Tess. I'm just
Yeah. That's
So,
it.
so if I am understanding Barbara's question, having a first and a second, and it comes out to a certain amount of number, you've got a property that's worth so much amount.
Yes.
So you're paying off your first and second. Now
Through a reverse.
Through a reverse.
Yes.
Okay, through a reverse. Am I going in the right direction, Barbara? Okay, you're paying off, paying off, now you have a reverse, say, for $400,000, as an example. So, but you've got still equity.
Yes.
And that number that she can pull, that she can keep drawing on, is calculated by, obviously, the formulas, right?
Yes.
Age and everything like that. So say you may have an extra $200,000 to $300,000 now, where you're going to be getting paid back. That's how much money you're getting paid back. Is that, am I saying?
No, so you pay off that 400,000, and then whatever's left over, whatever equity else you can grab becomes becomes what we call a line of credit. And that will continue to grow. You could get 50 grand from somewhere, you could pay down the loan. I mean, there's a million different things you can kind of do with this process. But again, I always say every situation is uniquely different. And it's really important to walk through that all.
Good question.
Yeah.
So when you take out the reverse.
They were
both spouses are alive,
Yes,
one passes.
that's right.
Does anything change with that reverse?
Mm.
No. As long as one of the two are still alive, the reverse is in effect. Second
Yep.
question. Do you charge a fee for someone to come into your office and you look at their picture? Is
No.
So it's a free consultation?
I don't get paid until the loan closes.
Okay.
So I do not get paid until, so if it doesn't close, I don't get paid.
Any other
Which
questions
happens so far.
The length of time typically to go through.
Yeah, it's about 30 to 45 days.
How can we get, how can we go to your office?
So I have cards here. So
We're gonna pass them out.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so was there any other questions of?
Yeah.
So you mentioned about 6 to 7% at the moment.
Yes.
Interest rate.
Yes.
Line of equity or, what you say, line of credit.
Yes.
So is it fixed or?
No, it's variable.
Variable. So we try to like treasury bills or something like that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
Good
then
question.
the second question is, you can either take out as a lump sum
Mhm.
or like an annual price, like monthly.
Yes.
$1,000. Is it inflation adjusted or is that correct?
It's up to you. So if you decide I need 1,100 instead of 1,000, yeah. There's no, it's not tied to anything like that. That piece is not, it is, yeah. And I always tell people, take out, do it for a couple months and figure it out. I had a couple that just closed and they were like, we got to get the 2,000 coming. I said, hold on, because it's going to grow in your line of credit and you want it to grow. And now the wife goes, I see what you mean now. I'm like, yeah. So
But the line of credit, he said, or you said, is very.
it is variable.
So it's constantly.
It's moving up and down. Mhm. But it's a line of credit. So that's what it is there for that. So I walk through I mean, all of this, I say, this is what it looks like. It can't go higher than like credit card bills can go up to whatever they decide, right? Over 20%. This can't go that high. So there's caps on it as well. And I walk through all that.
Okay, so there's we still have one last thing, Angel. Anything that we need to work on?
Yes. Hi, everyone. My name is Angel, Tess Marquez assistant. So before we end today's seminar, I want to take a moment to share a little about Tess and how she helps families through probate real estate. So we've put together a short video highlighting a few client stories and reviews. Let's take a look. Let me know if you can't hear, so we can have Jesse.
I'm Tess Marquez, your real estate agent. Hear what my clients say about working with me.
Excited?
Yes, I'm excited to give you my house. So hopefully we could sell it fast, you know. You're the best, I know. I
thank
trust you and you've been so good to everybody. So hopefully this will be done
Okay.
in a good.
Okay, I'm now with the buyer, Francisco. Congratulations, Francisco.
Thanks, Tess.
The deal.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, it was smooth. It was smooth.
Yeah, it was smooth. This is all a new process
You're
for
on.
us. So
Very exciting,
yeah.
right?
It was an excellent experience, and we cannot believe how fast it was. Unbelievable.
For me, it's the greatest experience. Not only that, you're always there when we need you, and you really took care of us. Like, specific example was the interest rate. So you really took care of us, and you always think what's best for us. So, 2 thumbs up.
Really appreciate that. And Vanji, if I have 3, I'll do 3 times.
There.
It was really great. It was efficient, especially for people that are busy and like don't really have time. So Tess will give you specific list of what needs to be done and when it's needed. Not just to sometimes it's stressful, but it happens so quickly. She'll ask you specifically, what are you looking for? And then I think after 3 or 4 recommendation, we found this house, which is really what we need. So excellent. And I would really recommend, not just for commercial purposes, but for our experience. So
Great.
Our experience was fantastic.
Yes, thank you so much to Tess
Yes.
and her whole team for helping us
Yes.
through not only the sale of our mobile home, but also buying this house. It's been such a long process, but she's been so kind to us and so
Kind,
patient.
patient.
So we love you, Tess. Thank you so much.
How was your experience with me? That's the more important thing.
That was very easy. You did a great job advocating for us. There was some things that I'd rather not had to deal with the other seller or the seller and realtor, and you took care of those problems like you've done this before, and I think you have.
We'd greatly
Very good, Ma'am Tess.
Really appreciate the support that you give me for all my long-term clients here. Marcel, Jane, Sandra, and Laura. And, it's so nice to be able to be with them. And don't worry, if any question, and we will say that, that you guys have, and I'd like to also be able to be connected with your kids, because this is my problem now, I have the parents, I'm talking to them, and when the kids take over, some of them, I lose them. So the kids are taking over. So please don't forget, and those magnets, put it in your refrigerator, okay? And also take the treats too. I'm here for you. Thank you for Tom, okay, okay. Okay, thank you so very, very much, okay? And for Susan too, thank you very much. And anything that you need, I'm here for you.
Could I just say,
Sure.
Tess, do this often? Is it the first time?
I do it I do it like kind of twice a year so far. The last one I did was a Zoom, okay, but I feel like on the Zoom, there's no connection. That's why I would like to do it in person, okay?
And I just want to say that I think it's better as a group than a
Yes.
one-on-one.
Yes,
because
absolutely.
They're gonna ask questions that I'm not gonna think. to
Yeah,
ask.
yeah.
It's better.
And because when we do a Zoom, okay, and this is what happened the first time, that's why I'm doing it like, when I do a Zoom, when you're home, things come up and you get off track. This is full concentration. Trust me, for those hours from 10 to 12, you need this time to really think about it, spend time. Time is important to spend here, okay?
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. All right.
Thanks, Ted.
So, there's some,
Pastries, please take the pastries. Heck, it's your sugar. Of course. Thank you.
Yeah.
We'll sit down, no charge for the housing agent, last questionnaire. We can go through and they're talking about.
That's why I said, look at it.
Glendora. Oh, Steve, I get it. Oh, you're-